When Mom died, everything in the house went silent. Not just the kind of silence you hear when people stop talking, it was heavier than that. It was the silence of something missing. Something that used to hold all of us together. I still remember standing in the hallway that morning, my hands shaking as I looked at her favorite scarf draped over the mirror. The faint scent of her perfume lingered, jasmine and vanilla, and it made my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe. Dad didn't say much for days. He just moved like a shadow. The house became cold, colorless, like it had forgotten what warmth was. Dinners went uneaten. Curtains stayed closed. And somehow, without planning it, I started picking up the pieces she left behind. It began small, washing the dishes she would have cleaned, folding the laundry the way she liked it, setting the table the way she always did, fork on the left, knife on the right, napkin folded perfectly. But Dad noticed. "Thanks, kiddo," he said one evening, his voice tired but grateful. "Your mom would have liked that." Something about that sentence stuck in my head. Your mom would have liked that. Maybe that's why, a week later, I found myself standing in front of her closet. Her clothes still hung there, untouched. I told myself I was just checking if they needed to be stored. But my hands trembled as I touched her dresses. Soft fabrics, floral prints, gentle colors. Each one carried a memory. Her shoes lined up neatly below, and I could almost hear her humming when she used to get ready for church. And before I could stop myself, I whispered, maybe, just once. I slipped one of her cardigans over my shoulders. It smelled like her, warm, kind, safe. I looked in the mirror, and for a split second, I didn't see me. I saw her reflection blending with mine. It scared me, but also comforted me. When I stepped out into the hallway, Dad was sitting on the couch, lost in an old photo album. He looked up, and for a second, just a second, his eyes softened. "You look nice," he said quietly. Then, almost as if he regretted it, he looked away. That moment changed everything. At first, it was about keeping him company. I'd sit where she used to sit during dinner. I'd hum her songs when cooking. I'd wear her apron when doing the dishes. He didn't say anything. He didn't stop me. He just seemed when I did. Soon, people from the neighborhood started visiting again. They'd bring food, offer condolences, talk softly. Some of them mistook me for her from behind once, because of the hair or the cardigan, or maybe because I was standing in the same light where she always stood. I laughed it off, but something about it gave me goosebumps. Weeks passed, and the house slowly started to look like it used to. Flowers on the table, curtains open, the faint smell of fresh coffee in the morning. But it wasn't her who brought it back. It was me. And that realization hit hard. Dad began asking for my help with things she used to do. "Can you help me choose the curtains? You remember how your mom used to season the stew?" He didn't notice, but with every question, with every request, I was stepping deeper into her place. And one night, I caught myself wearing one of her dresses, not out of curiosity this time, but because it made Dad smile. I told myself it was harmless. A gesture of comfort. But inside, I was changing too. When I looked in the mirror, I started adjusting my posture like she did. I tied my hair back the same way. I even found myself whispering in her tone, soft, careful, gentle. I didn't mean to lose myself. It just happened. Then came the day Dad called me by her name. It was early morning. I had made breakfast, eggs, toast and tea, exactly how she used to. I placed it on the table and said, "Eat before it gets cold." Dad looked up at me, smiling faintly. "Thanks, Laura." The name hit me like thunder. My real name froze on my tongue. I wanted to correct him, but something stopped me. The way he said it, tender, relieved, made my heart ache. I just smiled and sat down quietly. From that morning onward, it became a strange rhythm. He didn't always call me Laura, but when he did, I didn't fight it. I let it happen. Because when he said it, the emptiness in his voice disappeared, and for that brief moment, it felt like Mom was home again. I started keeping up the illusion. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to, for him, and maybe for myself too. The house was alive again. We talked. We laughed. I wore her soft blouses, sometimes even her perfume. When visitors came, They'd glance at me and whisper, "He looks just like her." I told myself I was helping us heal. But every night, when I washed off the makeup and stared into the mirror, I wasn't sure whose eyes were staring back. Mine? Or hers? The breaking point came when Dad asked me to come to the memorial service, as her. "It would mean a lot," he said quietly. "Just for that day. You look so much like her. I think people would feel comforted." My throat tightened. I didn't know how to say no. So that night, I stood in front of her vanity, trembling as I tried to recreate her look. Her pearl earrings. Her soft pink lipstick. The floral dress she wore on their anniversary. When I stepped out, Dad's eyes welled up. He whispered, "Laura." I couldn't hold his gaze. At the memorial, everyone gasped. Some hugged me. Some cried. A few even said, "You're her mirror image." I smiled through trembling lips, my hands cold as ice. That evening, as I took off the dress, I finally broke down. I didn't know who I was anymore, her son, her memory, or her ghost. The next few days were quiet again. Dad avoided talking about it, and I tried to stay away from her things. But every corner of the house carried her shadow, and now my reflection too. I started feeling split, half me, half her. Then one afternoon, I heard Dad in the kitchen. He was talking softly to someone, except no one was there. He was talking to me, calling me Laura, asking me to sit with him, just like old times. My chest tightened. I realized I'd gone too far. That night, I packed her clothes back into boxes, one by one, whispering apologies into the fabric. But when I reached her mirror, I froze again. The reflection looking back wasn't just mine anymore. It was a blend of us both. And somehow, that didn't scare me this time. It felt peaceful. Because maybe she wasn't gone. Maybe a part of her lived on through me. Not in the clothes, not in the face, but in the love she left behind. The next morning, I sat down with Dad. "Dad," I said softly, "I'm not Mom." He looked at me for a long moment, and then nodded slowly, tears filling his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I just missed her so much." "I do too," I said. "But we have to start living again. As us." He smiled weakly. "You're right." We boxed up her things together that day. We cried, we laughed, we remembered her stories. When the last box was sealed, I felt lighter. But that night before going to bed, I took out one thing, her scarf. I wrapped it gently around my shoulders. Not as her. As me. Because I realized something. Being her son didn't mean losing myself. Carrying her kindness, her warmth, her strength. That was how I could keep her alive. Months passed. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt like home again. Sometimes I still wear her cardigan on cold mornings, or hum her songs while cooking. Dad smiles when I do, not because he sees her, but because he sees me healing. I even started volunteering at the community center where she used to work. People tell me I remind them of her spirit, and for once, that makes me proud, not confused. Looking back now, I realize that losing Mom didn't just take something away from me, it reshaped me. I learned that grief isn't about forgetting or replacing, it's about transforming. About carrying the pieces of someone you loved and letting them guide you toward who you're meant to become. And even though the title of this story might sound shocking, the truth is simpler, deeper. After Mom passed, I did become her. Not in body, not in role, but in heart. And that's what finally brought us both peace. If you've ever lost someone, you know that emptiness never really goes away. It just changes shape. Sometimes, it looks like silence. Sometimes, it looks like a memory reflected in the mirror. And sometimes, it looks like you, carrying their laughter, their warmth, their spirit. For a long time, I thought I was losing myself by stepping into her place. But now I understand, I wasn't becoming her to replace her. I was becoming someone strong enough to remember her, to live for both of us. So if you're grieving, don't be afraid of how it changes you. Because sometimes, love transforms us in ways we never expected. And that transformation is what keeps the people we love alive, forever. It started with her perfume. That soft, powdery scent that used to follow her everywhere. The first few days after she was gone, I couldn't stand it. It made me cry. But one evening, when I was cleaning her dresser, I found the small glass bottle sitting there, half full, and before I knew it, I sprayed it once in the air. The mist shimmered under the light. And suddenly, for the first time in weeks, the house smelled alive again. Dad walked past the hallway that night, stopped and whispered, "You used her perfume?" I froze. I just missed her smell. He nodded, eyes glistening. "It's nice. Feels like she's still here." And just like that, something unspoken passed between us, an agreement maybe, that I could keep her alive through these little things. But little things have a way of growing. A few days later, I found myself in front of her vanity. The same spot where she used to sit every morning, humming quietly as she brushed her hair. The mirror still had a few strands of her perfume-dusted powder. Her makeup brushes were perfectly lined up, and her favorite lipstick, that soft rose color, sat uncapped as if she just stepped away for a moment. I stared at it for a long time before I picked it up. My hands trembled as I rolled it open. The color looked faintly familiar, the same shade she wore every Sunday. I told myself it was just curiosity, a fleeting moment of remembrance. But when I pressed it against my lips and looked into the mirror, my breath caught. For the first time, my reflection didn't look like a stranger mourning someone. It looked like a memory coming back to life. And that terrified me. I wiped it off instantly, splashing water on my face. But that image stayed burned into my mind. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I wore my usual jeans and hoodie, made breakfast for Dad, and pretended not to notice that her perfume still lingered in the air. But when Dad smiled across the table, I realized he was smiling through me. "Your mom always made the eggs this way," he said softly, chewing slowly. "You're just like her sometimes." My chest tightened. I didn't know whether to feel proud or guilty. After he left for work, I stood at the sink, scrubbing the dishes, and caught my reflection in the window. The faint lipstick stain still clung to the edge of my lips. I didn't wipe it off this time. Over the next week, I started doing more of the things she used to. I don't even know when the shift happened. It was like I woke up one day and felt her presence guiding me, not as a ghost, but as an instinct. Her voice echoed in my head when I cooked, a pinch of salt, not too much. When I folded laundry, smooth out the sleeves first. When I set the table, the napkin goes under the fork. I started humming her songs without realizing it. Little things that made Dad smile again. One night, I found her old apron hanging behind the kitchen door. It was light yellow, with tiny embroidered flowers near the pockets. I put it on, just for fun, I told myself, and continued cooking. When Dad came home, he stood in the doorway for a long moment. His eyes softened. "You look just like her when you stand there," he whispered. My hands froze. "Dad." He shook his head, blinking back tears. "Sorry. You just remind me of better times." I smiled weakly, pretending not to notice how much those words both hurt and comforted me. Soon, I started wearing her clothes at home. At first, it was practical. Her sweaters were soft, her cardigans warm, perfect for the chilly evenings. But over time, it became something else. The fabric felt like a shield. When I wore her clothes, I didn't feel so lost. I felt closer to her, as if she were whispering through me, helping me survive. I remember the first time I tried one of her dresses. It was a simple floral one, the kind she used to wear on lazy Sundays. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the sleeves, my pulse racing. It was strange, seeing my face above her clothes. Strange and familiar. Then I heard the floor creak behind me. Dad was standing in the doorway, holding a cup of tea. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked at me, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Sorrow, love, confusion, maybe all at once. I didn't mean to," I started. He interrupted softly, "It's okay. You look nice." Then he walked away. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding. That was the moment the line between remembering her and becoming her began to blur. Days melted into weeks. Every morning, I'd tell myself, just one more day like this, then I'll stop. But I never did. I started brushing my hair like hers. I learned how to tie it back, how to walk more gracefully. I even tried on her jewelry, the small pearl earrings she always wore. When I saw myself in the mirror, it wasn't just about appearance anymore. It was about presence. About filling the space she left behind. Dad seemed lighter these days. He talked more, smiled more. We even started cooking together again. Me wearing her apron, him talking about old memories. Sometimes, when he looked at me across the table, I could tell he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing both of us, the woman he loved, and the child she left behind. And maybe in that combination, he found peace. But I didn't. Because every night after Dad went to bed, I'd sit in front of her vanity again, removing the earrings, the cardigan, the lipstick, and stare at the reflection underneath. It felt like peeling away layers of identity. Who was I without these things? Just a son trying to heal? Or a ghost wearing someone else's life? Sometimes I'd whisper to the mirror, "Mom, are you still here?" But the silence that followed was deafening. One evening, I found an old video of her on Dad's phone. She was laughing, holding a cake, singing off-key. Her voice filled the room, and I broke down completely. That night, I wore her dress again, not to imitate, not to comfort Dad, but because I needed to feel her one last time. When I looked in the mirror, I whispered, "I miss you." And for the briefest second, I could have sworn I saw her smile back. The next morning, Dad found me sitting at the kitchen table, still in her cardigan. He sat down quietly and said, "You don't have to do this, you know." I looked up, startled. "Do what?" "Keep pretending she's still here." I swallowed hard. "I just don't want you to be alone." He reached across the table, holding my hand. "I'm not. Not as long as you're here, as you." His voice broke when he added, "Your mom wouldn't want you to lose yourself trying to keep her alive." Those words hit deeper than anything else. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just wearing her clothes. I was wearing her absence. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. The lipstick, the dress, the perfume, they were all there waiting. But this time, I didn't reach for them. Instead, I whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything. But I think it's time I learned to live as me again." The reflection in the mirror softened, and somehow I felt her there, smiling quietly. From that day on, I didn't stop being her completely. I just stopped losing myself in her. I still cook like she did. I still wear her cardigan on rainy mornings. But now, I look in the mirror and see both of us, her strength my face, her love my life. And that's enough. Spring came quietly that year. The air smelled different, fresh, forgiving. The kind of air that seeps through half-open windows and tells you it's time to start again. I just finished boxing up the last of Mom's old clothes when I noticed how bright the room looked. For months, it had been filled with her shadows, mirrors draped, curtains half-closed, but now sunlight touched every surface. It didn't sting anymore. I took one deep breath and whispered, "We're okay now, Mom." For the first time, I meant it. Dad had started joining the neighbors for morning walks. He still wore his wedding ring, but his steps felt lighter. Sometimes he'd come back with fresh bread or flowers and place them on the table with a soft smile. I think we were both learning how to live again. Separately, but side by side. As for me, I went back to work at the local library. At first, people treated me carefully, like a fragile page that might tear. But the rhythm of shelving books, helping visitors, and hearing laughter again began to restore something inside me. One afternoon, a coworker looked at me and said, "You've changed." I froze. "Changed how?" She smiled. "You just seem peaceful. Like you found what you were looking for." I didn't know what to say, but the truth was, I had stopped searching for Mom in the mirror. I was starting to find myself there again. Still, the traces of her lingered. Sometimes I'd wear her scarf when the mornings were cold. Or hum her song while wiping the counters. But now, it wasn't imitation. It was connection, a gentle echo, not an identity. I started journaling at night, writing letters to her the way I used to text her during college. "Hi, Mom. I learned how to bake your cinnamon rolls today. I finally got them right." Dad cried when he tasted them. Each word felt like stitching a little piece of my heart back together. One Sunday, Dad called me into the living room. There's something I want to show you. He handed me a photo album I'd never seen before. Old pictures of her childhood, their wedding, me as a baby. She used to say you'd inherit her eyes, he murmured. But I think you got her heart instead. We spent hours flipping through the pages. For the first time, we talked about her without sadness, just gratitude. When the evening light turned gold, I realized that love didn't disappear with loss. It just changed shape, finding new places to live. Weeks passed, and I started volunteering at the community center where Mom used to teach art to kids. The first day I walked in, the scent of paint and old wood nearly overwhelmed me. But then a little girl tugged at my sleeve and said, "Can you help me draw a butterfly?" I smiled. Sure. Her tiny hands were covered in blue paint. I guided her brush, laughing when the wings turned uneven. She grinned proudly. "It's still pretty." "Exactly," I said. "Pretty doesn't have to be perfect." As I said it, I realized I was talking to myself, too. That night, I came home exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in years. Dad was in the kitchen, humming. "You seem happy," he said. "I think I am." He nodded. She'd be proud. I smiled. Of both of us. We sat down to dinner. No ghosts, no illusions. Just two people who had survived love and loss, and learned to live again. There are still days when I miss her so much it hurts. I'll catch myself reaching for her cardigan on cold mornings, or glancing at the seat where she used to sit. But instead of tears, I feel warmth now. Because I understand something I didn't before, she isn't gone from me. She's woven into the way I care, the way I listen, the way I choose kindness even when it's hard. That's what she left me, not clothes or routines, but the blueprint for love. Months later, on the anniversary of her passing, Dad and I visited her grave. We didn't bring sadness this time. We brought flowers, wild ones, the kind she loved, and laughter. "I finally learned to make your stew," Dad said aloud, chuckling. "He taught me." I added softly, "and I finally learned to live as me again." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere unseen. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was her. Either way, it felt like a blessing. Grief once made me believe that loving someone meant holding on so tightly you forgot how to breathe. But love, real love, isn't about holding on. It's about carrying forward. I used to think becoming her was the only way to keep her alive. Now I know she was never gone. She was inside me all along, in every kind act, every laugh, every sunrise that I finally stopped being afraid to watch. So if you've ever lost someone, remember this: you don't honor them by becoming them. You honor them by becoming the best of what they loved in you. And that's how you keep them, not in mirrors or clothes, but in the life you continue to live.